Victor Matfield's bold take. Why he still believes the Springboks can fight back. The first match of the rugby's greatest rivalry series delivered a result that surprised many rugby fans, but former Springboks captain Victor Matfield believes the story is far from over. South Africa suffered a 33-16 defeat against the All Blacks at Ellis Park, a result that ended the Springboks' impressive 12-match winning run and gave New Zealand an early 1-0 advantage in the four-test series. The All Blacks also returned to the top of the World Rugby rankings, adding even more significance to a result that already carried plenty of weight. On the surface, a 5-1 scoreline appears convincing, and it would be easy to assume that New Zealand had completely controlled the contest. But Victor Matfield sees the match differently. Speaking on SuperSport's Final Whistle Presents side entry, the legendary lock explained why he is not particularly worried about the Springboks despite their heavy-looking defeat. His argument is simple. The modern international game is extremely competitive, small moments can completely change a match, and South Africa created enough opportunities and showed enough control in key areas to suggest that the result may not tell the whole story. For Matfield, this is not a situation where one team has suddenly become clearly superior to the other. Instead, he believes the Springboks were punished for failing to take their chances when they appeared. That distinction could become extremely important as the series continues. One of the biggest points made by Matfield was that international rugby is now too competitive for one country to dominate for several years in the way New Zealand did during their strongest period in the 2010s. According to him, teams are now much closer together, and a handful of moments can completely change the direction of a match. That was exactly what he felt happened at Ellis Park. South Africa had opportunities early in the game but failed to convert them into points, while New Zealand showed impressive efficiency whenever they reached the attacking 22. The result was a growing gap on the scoreboard, even though Matfield felt the Springboks were doing many things well. He also pointed to a similar experience from the previous year, when South Africa faced questions after losing to Australia. At that time, there were concerns about whether the Springboks were entering the end of an era. Yet South Africa responded strongly and continued to compete at the highest level. For Matfield, that history is another reason not to overreact to one disappointing performance. Rugby is a sport where momentum can shift quickly, and a single result does not necessarily define an entire team or an entire series. What makes Matfield's assessment particularly interesting is his belief that South Africa actually dominated several important areas against the All Blacks. He highlighted the scrum as one of the clearest examples. From his perspective, the Springboks achieved the physical dominance they expected in that area, particularly during the first half. He also felt South Africa improved their control at lineout time after the break. These details matter because set-piece performance is often viewed as a foundation of South African rugby. If the Springboks can consistently create pressure through the scrum and lineout, they can give their backs better attacking opportunities and spend more time playing in the right areas of the field. Matfield also believed South Africa looked comfortable in attack between the 22-meter lines. That may sound like a small detail, but it is an important part of the former lock's argument. The Springboks were able to move the ball and build phases, yet they struggled to turn promising positions into points. Meanwhile, New Zealand proved extremely dangerous when they reached the final quarter of the field. Players such as Roigard demonstrated the ability to make important decisions under pressure, and Matfield openly acknowledged that the All Blacks have special players capable of producing decisive moments. That combination of South African opportunities and New Zealand efficiency ultimately created the difference on the scoreboard. Another interesting part of Matfield's comments was his assessment of the All Blacks' attacking approach. He felt New Zealand did not repeatedly use wide attacking patterns from deep set-piece positions to force South Africa into difficult defensive decisions. Instead, the All Blacks were able to take advantage of key moments closer to the Springboks' 22-meter line. This suggests that South Africa's defensive structure was not necessarily the main problem throughout the contest. Rather, the pressure increased when the Springboks failed to score and New Zealand began converting their own opportunities. That shift in pressure became particularly important after halftime. Matfield described the situation as a moment when South Africa needed to break through but could not find the crucial score. The Springboks continued to apply pressure, but the points did not arrive. Then came one of the pivotal sequences of the match. New Zealand won a turnover scrum inside their own 22, moved the ball away from danger, and eventually scored through Fabian Holland. For Matfield, that sequence represented a major turning point. Suddenly, the pressure that had been sitting on New Zealand moved across to South Africa. The Springboks were now chasing the game, and every missed opportunity became more costly. This is one of the fascinating aspects of Test rugby. A team can appear to be in control territorially and physically, yet if it cannot turn that control into points, the opposition can remain alive. Once the scoreboard begins moving in the wrong direction, the psychological pressure becomes very different. Players begin taking greater risks, decisions become more difficult, and the team that is leading can play with increasing confidence. Matfield believes that is exactly what happened to South Africa. He recalled similar situations from his own playing career, including matches where a team repeatedly crossed the opposition try line but somehow failed to score. Those moments can be difficult to explain because the performance may look positive for long periods, yet the scoreboard tells a completely different story. That was the frustration facing the Springboks at Ellis Park. They had enough possession, physicality and attacking territory to create genuine opportunities, but they did not consistently finish those opportunities. New Zealand, on the other hand, were clinical when their chances arrived. That difference in execution ultimately became decisive. Despite the defeat, Matfield does not believe the result indicates that the All Blacks are about to dominate South Africa across the remainder of the series. In fact, he made it clear that he did not see anything during the match that convinced him New Zealand would automatically beat the Springboks 2 or 3 times in a row. That is a significant statement considering the scoreline and the momentum the All Blacks now have. But it also reflects the competitive nature of the series. New Zealand have gained confidence, returned to number 1 in the world rankings and snapped South Africa's long winning streak. Those are important achievements. At the same time, South Africa now have a clear opportunity to respond. The biggest question is not whether the Springboks can create pressure. Matfield's comments suggest that they already showed they can do that. The bigger question is whether they can turn that pressure into points when the next opportunities arrive. If South Africa can improve their finishing, maintain their scrum dominance and continue to challenge New Zealand at the lineout, the next test could look very different. For the All Blacks, the challenge will be to reproduce the composure and efficiency that helped them escape pressure in the opening match. Cam Roigard and the rest of the New Zealand attack showed that they can make the most of limited opportunities, but the Springboks will surely be determined to reduce those opportunities in the next encounter. That creates an intriguing tactical battle for the remainder of the series. South Africa have the experience, physicality and quality to respond, while New Zealand now have the confidence that comes with beating the world's top-ranked team on their own terms. Victor Matfield's message, therefore, is not that the Springboks should ignore the defeat. Instead, his message is that they should understand it properly. The 33-16 scoreline tells us that New Zealand were more effective on the scoreboard, but it does not automatically mean South Africa were completely outplayed in every area. Rugby matches are often decided by a handful of moments, and Ellis Park provided several examples of that reality. The Springboks missed opportunities, New Zealand capitalized, and the pressure shifted. Now the response will be what matters most. With 3 tests still to play, the series remains open, and both teams have plenty to prove. Victor Matfield clearly believes South Africa can learn from the defeat rather than be defined by it. His confidence comes from what he saw on the field: scrum dominance, improved lineout control, promising attacking positions and enough defensive organization to compete with the All Blacks. What was missing was the ability to finish those moments. And that may be the biggest lesson from the opening test. Against a team as dangerous as New Zealand, opportunities cannot be wasted. If the Springboks can correct that problem, the next chapter of this rivalry could be a very different story. The All Blacks have the early advantage,